I wanted to tell you guys about something that's happening regarding Ukraine, Iran, the United States. This is from The Guardian, and the headline says, "Our lives are destroyed. Families take fight for truth of Flight 752 to the International Criminal Court." So you guys recall that this Ukraine International Airlines flight, number 752, was shot down over Tehran by Iranian anti-aircraft missiles in January 2020. It killed all 176 people on board. That is absolutely horrific and heartbreaking. Really, it's horrible. I can't even imagine what those families are going through, really. Basically, what they're doing now is they're taking this to the International Criminal Court. And the way the ICC works, you know, if you have a dispute between two countries, for example, Afghanistan accuses the United States of committing war crimes in Afghanistan, which they did. Even though the United States is not a signatory of the Rome Statute to the International Criminal Court, Afghanistan is and could take them to trial. That's why, by the way, the Israelis were fuming when the Palestinians were given permission, or shall we say the ICC established jurisdiction and gave them permission to take the Israelis to the ICC. So what these families are now doing, they're basically going to take Iran to the International Criminal Court for killing their relatives and saying that they did it on purpose and it was a war zone and so on. And I want to just give you an idea of who was on board this flight. So among the 176 victims, plus an unborn child, there were 82 Iranians. So most of them were Iranians. 63 Canadians, 11 Ukrainians, 10 Swedes, 4 Afghans, and 3 Britons. Their argument right now, because, you know, the Canadians refused to open an investigation. They said it's too far away. They don't have access to the evidence. You know, and then the Ukrainians took lead of the investigation, but it didn't work out. So their efforts to get justice were frustrated. Their argument of taking this to the ICC is basically that this was a war zone. They say that the shooting down of the plane followed the U.S. drone strike killing Iranian General Qasem Soleimani on January 3rd, 2020. And a retaliatory Iranian missile strike against U.S. bases in Iraq 5 days later. Therefore, the application to the International Criminal Court argues that an international armed conflict existed at the time, and the downing of the plane was therefore a crime. You can't go to the International Criminal Court and argue this without saying that, look guys, there was a war taking place. That's why, you know, there was a war crime. And the interesting thing here, why I find this interesting, is because Iran was attacked by the Americans. They assassinated one of the most important military officials that they have. But they did it in Iraq, right? Which the Americans are occupying. And Iran responded to the Americans in Iraq. Not in Iran and not in the United States. You understand? So it's very interesting. Now, why was this plane shot down? This whole situation is so ugly and disgusting. You know, if Trump had not killed Soleimani to please the Israelis, none of this would have ever happened. What the Iranians say why this plane was shot down, tragically, is that you had an officer who thought it was an American bomber. Now, why would this Iranian officer, why would this battery shoot down this plane thinking it's an American bomber? A few days before, Trump tweeted that he is going to bomb Iran if they retaliate. And here's the tweet. Remember, violence and threatening war is okay if you're a US president, and you can do it on Twitter. This is what Trump said. He said they will target 52 Iranian sites representing the 52 American hostages that were taken by Iran many years ago. Some at a very high level and important to Iran and the Iranian culture. And those targets in Iran itself will be hit very fast and very hard. The USA wants no more threats. So again, just to walk you through this, Donald Trump assassinated General Soleimani. The Iranians fired rockets at an American base, killing no one. And then Donald Trump said, if you threaten us, if you do anything, you know, if you defend yourself, basically, after I murdered one of your top officials, we're going to bomb you. And did you notice he said cultural sites, which is a war crime? I mean, if you go and bomb a monument or a landmark or a UNESCO World Heritage sites, Iran has 35 of them, by the way. they shot down this passenger plane tragically, thinking that it was the Americans sending a bomber after Donald Trump had literally threatened that. So I'm not saying that it completely absolves the Iranians. I'm not saying they did it on purpose, obviously. I really doubt Iran did that on purpose. I find absolutely no truth in that. But what I'm trying to say here is that the Americans basically created this tense situation. They started murdering Iranian officials. They started this conflict, and then they blame everything on Iran. You can't do that. That doesn't make sense. That makes absolutely no sense. And I'm not saying it absolves anyone of responsibility. I'm not saying that there shouldn't be compensation or something like that. I'm not, trying to denigrate what happened to these families and to their, it's horrible. But you can't come here and just like forget, act like Donald Trump didn't threaten Iran. He said that, and this Guardian article makes no mention of it. They don't mention the fact that Donald Trump was threatening Iran to bomb all these sites. I mean, how can you talk about the situation and omits this, completely omits this? Here's a tweet, by the way, from Professor Marandi. This is what he says. He says, the article is gaslighting, using a tragedy caused by Trump to cover up the United States regime's endless crimes. Won't hide anything. The coup, the Shah's savak, support for Saddam, gifting chemical weapons, targeting innocent civilians with sanctions, terrorism. So, he's making a great point that the United States crimes go way back. I mean, when he says coup, what's he talking about? He's talking about 1953, British intelligence, American intelligence, they got together, MI6 and the CIA, and they couped Iran's prime minister because they wanted the oil in Iran. And then when he says Shah's savak, the savak was the secret police under the Shah. They were extremely brutal. They tortured people. They just horrific repression. And, this is backed by America, backed by Britain. And they gave Saddam Hussein weapons to attack Iran. They gave him chemical weapons to attack Iran. So this is a long, long history. Never mind the sanctions. And, you create a tense situation like that. Of course you're going to have tragedies like this. This is what's so dangerous. And I just want to connect this to Ukraine again, even, this is Ukrainian flight, but let's look at what's happening in Ukraine today. This is why when you have NATO prodding Russia, when you put them together, in a very tense situation like this, you can have tragedies like this, and even on a nuclear level. Do you understand what I'm saying? So when you pit powers together like this and you create tense situations, it can lead to nuclear disaster even. And by the way, I don't need to teach you guys, in the Cold War, there were many, many times during the Cold War where, nuclear apocalypse was averted by this, by this much, by a millimeter. You almost had nuclear war between Russia and the United States. So let's not go there. Let's stop, provoking each other. Let's stop this nonsense. Maybe the United States should not be assassinating Iranian officials. Keep in mind, General Soleimani was not just in Iraq for tourism or he was invited to meet the prime minister. He was on an official visit as, basically a diplomat. Right? So there are many crimes going on here on many levels. I mean, obviously, he's more of a military official. I'm not saying he was a diplomat. Obviously, he was the head of the Quds force. But you understand what I'm saying? This is an official meeting and an official state invitation. And he killed him. And by the way, don't forget, Soleimani was with 7 other people, if I'm not mistaken. It was 8 people in total. And Abu Mahdi al-Muhandis among them, who is a commander of the PMU in Iraq, the Hashd al-Sha'bi. So really, I would also argue a crime against Iraq, because when you launch missiles and assassinate people on someone's soil, you're not just, committing murder, but you're not just murdering someone and committing a crime, you're also violating the sovereignty of that country, right? I just want to say that all of this can be avoided if you didn't have these greedy, warmongering people in power who like to provoke Iran, who provoke Russia, go to their borders, put warships and bases around them. What do you think is going to happen? This is so tragic what happened to these families. It's horrific. And it's so tragic what's happening right now in Ukraine. All of this is unnecessary.